Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Crypto Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Charles. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Crypto Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, the Crypto Guy, and today we're sitting down with content creator and writer Alex, aka Crypto Slothy.
So Alex, why don't you give us a little bit of background on what you were doing before crypto and then kind of how you got into the crypto scene?
Depending on how far you sort of want to go back, I'd briefly discuss what I did at university. I studied music technology, and shortly after university, I had some sort of admin jobs, data entry, things like that, while I was trying to get a place in the music industry. So that was where my initial passion lied, but unfortunately, it didn't really pan out. There are quite minimal places in the music industry and a lot of people that have degrees in that. So I decided to move to London into advertising. So I went on a grad scheme and I started to work for Group M, which is the world's biggest media agency. So that was an excellent foot in the door in the advertising world. And then I moved to another agency, and I'm not going to say what they are because I haven't fully doxed yet, and I want to maintain, a level of anonymity. So, if you're writing like me, you need to be on Medium, you need to be on, maybe try and get on CoinDesk or CCN or one of those big news sites. You're going to have some proper details about yourself out there. That's just the way it works, I think. It's not to say that it's a bad thing to remain anonymous at all, but exposure wise, especially for writing, it makes sense to the publishing platforms as possible. So in that respect, I'm sort of slowly eking out details about myself, opportunities basically.
So back into kind of your backstory, you moved from one agency to the next, and you're kind of keeping that under wraps for now.
Yeah, so the last two companies I worked for, I won't say the names, but one is a very well-known camera company, social media company, and the company I'm currently at is huge for online streaming, esports, and that sort of thing. So you could probably have a bit of an idea, but I'm not going to fully release those details. But yeah, no, it's been quite a journey until I found crypto around 18 months ago now, I think, maybe a bit more.
18 months, nice. So been in it for a little while. What kind of drew you towards it?
I mean, I was aware of Bitcoin in the background of, I knew what it was and I'd heard about it in the past. I didn't know too much about it. So how I fell into it was I joined a company who offered stocks as an incentive to join, which would sort of vest over 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And stocks was something that I'd never had the opportunity to own or earn. So I started learning. Basically, I had to learn what vested stocks meant and how I retrieved those when they vested and all that sort of thing. So I felt it would be a good idea to learn a bit about those, which got me interested in learning how to buy stocks, other stocks that weren't necessarily the companies that I owned, that I was working for. So I ended up downloading an app called Bucks. I'm not sure if this is like a global thing. It's BUX.
Bucks.
Is that something you've heard of?
No, it's not. Give me the kind of details on it. We might have something similar.
So it's basic. So it's really sort of like childish UI in a way, in the sense that basically you log on. It's got bright colors, pretty pictures, and you pick a Bitcoin was on there. You pick a stock, whatever it might be. There's literally 2 buttons. One has a down arrow, and then you can add leverage, and it just market buys at a specific point in time. So that's when I first started, actually looking into Bitcoin. And to be honest, it's quite a vague memory. I don't think anyone necessarily remembers exactly like how they got into crypto, Twitter and Discord, all that sort of thing, because Discord I'd never heard of before.
No, same.
Crypto.
Exactly. I know a lot of my gamer buddies are super big on it, but I had never heard of it because I don't game too much.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not something, unless you're a gamer or obviously into crypto. It literally seems like it's those two things, which is
exactly.
Yeah, so I started looking into Bitcoin and the other project. I mean, Bitcoin for me was obviously very, very interesting, and the movement of Bitcoin. But I started looking at other coins, and I didn't realize there were so many variations at the time. Privacy coins I was looking into. I owned some Verge at the time, and I started getting into
Shout
that.
out Pornhub.
Shout out to Pornhub. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I do have a story about Verge, which I might tell you at some point. It's a bit of a sad one.
Oh no.
Actually, do you know what I'll tell you now, because I think it kind of shapes this entire conversation, this entire sort of podcast. All of my savings, all the money that I had to be able to put into crypto, I decided to put into Verge, right? This was before Wraith. Do you remember Wraith protocol?
Yeah. So before the huge run up.
I was convinced, man. I was in the Reddit. I was active in all the places on the Telegram and everything. I thought this sounds great. 'Cause at the time with the Rave protocol thing, it was sort of offering something different from other coins. I think Monero wasn't as far ahead at that point. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to stick with this. I held it, until about November time. And then loads of FUD came out around Justin, the guy who runs Verge, and the fact that he'd been to prison like 4 times. And so I just sold everything I had and moved into other coins like ARK and sort of split the money I had. So a month later, must have been less than a month later, Verge had its run, Bitcoin had its run. And I think I had about £2,000 invested into Verge, and the potential there was to turn that into about £150,000. I mean, obviously, that's assuming you sell near the top and all that sort of thing. So you've got to take things into perspective. But the point is, I had my initial decision. I'd done my research. I was happy with everything. And then I succumbed to the FUD and the coordinated attacks, and that turned me off of it. And then that whole opportunity to make a life-changing sum of money that I never would have ever dreamed of having or never have had before, I missed out on that because I listened to these people. But that missed opportunity has sort of spurred me on for this entire year, that I've decided that I'm never going to have anything like that happen to me again. I'm not going to miss out on these opportunities. So that's been my drive for this entire year. Everything I've done this year has been learning as much as I can about market cycles, about fundamentals, about trading, and so that doesn't happen again. So yeah, there's my sob story about Verge.
I think everyone's got one with a coin. Tron is my example. I did exactly what you said, where I threw it in at 3 cents, I pulled it out at 6. I was beyond stoked with my 2x, and then I watched it go from 6 cents to like 23 cents or something like that. And looking back at it, I always just tell myself, hey, you got that 2x, but there's so much missed potential back then because, things were just so wild. Coins were doing 10x in a day.
Oh, I totally agree.
I don't think we can beat ourselves up about it, but it definitely was a lesson learned. And I think you've kind of taken away from it, the most that you can, is that, you really want to be on the forefront of this movement and don't want to miss opportunities. So you really need to put in the time and the work. And, a lot of people have been doing that over this last year. So that's kind of a great segment into what I wanted to talk about next. And, what have you been working on specifically over the last year? Kind of plug yourself. I know you write. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, of course. So like I was saying, missed opportunities is something that I think we've always experienced. And it's not just missed opportunities, it's missed opportunities through lack of knowledge, being told the wrong thing by the wrong person, trusting that is accurate. So I think one of the major problems in this space, because it's a new space, it's a new industry, it's just finding his feet, really. It's hard to find really good educational content. Because I think if you're just entering the space, it's easy to get misled, for one. If you don't know the concept of what a shield is, you will succumb to that without, not necessarily knowing what a good entry is. And it all goes round in a circle like that. So the last few months, I've really been quite switched on with crypto. I've decided to really ramp it up. So I have my site, alexlibertas.com, and it's essentially going to be it's a community site for the community. It's for education.
Let me stop you really quick. Sorry. Just for anyone who's listening who's not on Twitter or who hasn't connected with you on Twitter, can you just give them the spelling of your first and last name so they can check that site out?
Yeah, of course. It's Alex Libertas. That's ALEXERTAS.com. So It's going to be an educational site. So far, I've written 4 articles, and they cover things like influencer marketing, doxing, how to remain safe in the space from hacking, cover things like paid groups and what makes a good community for a cryptocurrency or a project. So these are all things that, they're quite niche. They're things that we need to be thinking about that aren't necessarily spoken about too often. Specifics of a coin, for example, if it's got a weak community and the team don't communicate that well, they don't address FUD, they don't address issues, it's going to struggle. It's going to massively struggle. So these are essentially guides that I've been making with interviews from big influencers and projects, and on a mini series, which I'm calling 2019 A Look at the Year Ahead. So this is going to feature 10 different projects, 10 different interviews talking about background about themselves, how they got into crypto, their achievements in 2018, and what's to be expected from them in 2019. So I think this should be a really good sort of exposure for different coins to get their word out, and hopefully I've got a good platform for them to do that. But I'm also going to spend a lot of time. I'm currently writing a guide for video content, so I want to talk about the basics of TA and fundamentals, but fundamentals again that people don't necessarily discuss, such as the most efficient way to use coin market cap. There are little tips and tricks in there that you might not necessarily know. Tools like coin market calendar that are always good at your disposal, sort of things like that. So it's going to be like an educational site for the community.
Let me just recover some things. The docuseries, is that going to be found on your website as well?
Yeah, of course. So everything I will be doing from now on will be on my website.
Okay,
Initially.
perfect.
Sorry about that. So this is going to be my hub.
No, it's all good. Any other sites that you're going to be blasting out on? I know a lot of people are big on YouTube. Are you going to kind of cover all of your social media, or what's your plan with that?
My website will be my hub where I own and control all of my own content, and still run a YouTube channel, still release articles on Medium, still post a lot on Twitter and stuff. So the idea is to drive everyone to my site so they have all this educational content in one place and they can sort of scroll through and see what's on there, what's on offer. You have to be on a lot of different sites. It's one of the keys to growing your brand. You have to have a YouTube account. You have to have a Medium account, especially if you're writing. You need to be on as much publications as possible. But I'll always be sort of promoting my site and trying to get people to go there, because that's where I want to have the hub of the content.
Yeah. I mean, that's fully in your control. So I think that for a lot of people who are setting up their website, I think that should be a main goal of theirs, is to really drive traffic to their site. And I think that's something that not everybody understands. They're on YouTube, they're on Twitter. They don't really have this centralized place where they can kind of bring all of their information that they put out, in one spot. So I really like where you're going with that.
Of course. And as well, like I was saying before about the different communities. So there's a bunch of sort of YouTubers that I've never heard of. When I go on YouTube, I've never seen them on Twitter. I've never seen them mentioned. There are whole different communities in these different places. So the idea is you go to each, and, if you can take a small percentage of those different communities, you can hopefully get them to follow your other social media accounts. But like you say, in this case, drive them to your site, because that's where everything links to. If you have your own site and you're constantly producing your own content, and you're updating it regularly, chances are the SEO points will increase with Google, and you'll get, when people search for crypto, your site will be further up that chain because you're producing your own content on a consistent basis. So that's another reason for having your own site as opposed to something like Medium.
Definitely. It's such a double-edged sword, though, because, with Mediums, there's such a huge community, and putting an article out on there, it just blasts it out to so many people have access to it. Whereas when you're first starting out on your site, you don't really have that community built around your site. You don't have those viewers who are coming back consistently. So it's tough. I mean, what do you recommend? It kind of sounds like you've obviously started on Medium, and then you're now moving to your site. How has that process been?
So what I recommend is don't be shy, don't be scared to network, don't be scared to approach people or message people. So I'm now writing for Altcoin magazine, which is a publication on Medium, which has about 1,400 followers. They actually approached me initially So that is the other way around. But I also have been accepted to write on Hacker Noon. So Hacker Noon are huge on Medium, all things tech. I went on their site, got an email address, wrote down a lot about myself, sent them an email, sent all the information. I'd say don't be scared to do that. Don't be scared to reach out, especially to people on Twitter as well. So the pleasant thing you'll find about Twitter is that people are very happy to help, which I was quite surprised about. So, I've interviewed quite a lot of influencers, a lot of the top accounts with anywhere between 15, 20,000 to 100,000, and they're more than willing to help and they're happy to help. So don't be scared to reach out to people. Don't be scared to and also, what's the harm in trying at the end of the day?
I was just gonna say, even if you don't get a message back, what's it to you?
Exactly. It makes no difference. Like, I've spoke to a couple of friends of mine who are interested in doing what I'm doing, but have said stuff like, I have a bit of social anxiety. I'm a bit worried that people will get annoyed if I post too much on Twitter, things like that. So my advice is just do what you want, basically. Don't be scared. Get in the mix. You'd be surprised at how happy people are to help. So every project I've asked for this mini series to have an interview, they've been more than happy. They've been more than welcoming.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of two-way street where you're reaching out to them so that you can get some help writing an article, and then on their end they're seeing it as kind of a way to promote their project. So don't ever think of it, a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm bothering them, but in reality, you kind of are both helping each other out, and that's something that a lot of people, I think, need to realize.
Absolutely, I totally agree. It's a win-win situation for both parties. Essentially, if you're trying to grow as a writer or grow your own brand or content or whatever it might be, you need to get big names, big projects, big influencers. So for them, it's more exposure, like you say.
So, kind of as a recap, you've got this docu series, you've got articles that you're putting out for, different news outlets. What are you most excited for in 2019? From talking with you, I'm most excited about your, kind of docu series that you've got going on. But why don't you tell me what you're most fired up about for in 2019?
Of course. I mean, yeah, like you say, first and foremost, it's about the site, it's about the docu-series, it's about having and owning my own content and seeing how that website grows. It's a site by the community, for the community, essentially. And I'm already in touch with other writers who have been speaking to me about, how I conduct my interviews and how I network. And I've said to them, if you want to upload your content on my platform, that's absolutely fine. It's for the community after all. So I have the potential there to get writers other than myself, which should also, reach more people and gather more engagement. So yeah,
There
I
we
mean, I'm
go,
really happy to
guys. You
see.
hear that? If you're trying to break into the industry, looking for some exposure, reach out. And I don't think that would bother him in the slightest.
Not at all, not one bit. Yeah, exactly. This is all, as I say, it's by the community for the community. So more than happy to reach out to me. Don't be scared to get your content out there. Don't be scared to approach people with your articles. What's the worst that could happen at the end of the day? Nothing. Even if they don't like it, they don't like it, and then you just move on to the next person. But I guarantee they won't. They won't say that. So yeah, if you want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy. All the details should be available after this podcast. So
There we go. Perfect. So I know you've dropped gem after gem on what writers can do if they're trying to kind of break into this industry. But if you were starting over square one, you've got close to 4,000 followers on Twitter. If that dropped down to zero and you were trying to get back into it, what would be, some of the first things that you would do?
So we can look at this in a couple of ways, because there's a first thing you can do as a writer, and there's a first thing you can do on Twitter, for example, because you have to have a platform in order to deliver your content for people to see it. So um, from a Twitter perspective, I think it's all about posting. It's all about posting consistently, posting informative articles, videos, information, things that people can learn. People appreciate that sort of thing, because without the platform, you won't have anywhere to show your content and get people to read it. So you should be constantly focusing on building a Twitter account, for example, so when it gets big enough, you can showcase your articles to as many people as you can. As a writer, write about what you feel comfortable writing about. If you're not too in the nitty gritty of the technology, which can get quite confusing at times, I think it'll be pretty obvious if you to the reader if you don't really know what you're talking about. So write about what you know. I think that's very important, and write about what you're passionate about. Otherwise, in your articles, and the reader will be able to tell that. So consistency of posting is very important. Make sure you have a lot of content. Make sure you keep writing content. So, for example, with my website and the docu-series, the reason why I've decided to do 10 projects is because once I build the site, I want to be able to sort of stagger the posts, as it were. So get to read one review or interview every 3 or 4 days, which means that project specifically, you get them as much exposure as possible. If they've liked the article and the format and the layout, then they'll look forward to the next one, and it will become psychologically, it will become something that people are expecting every 3 or 4 days. So staggering your content is also important. And it also maintains interest in you as a writer and your site that you're trying to build. So I think that's very important. Always have enough content.
Right on. So, just as a recap, hop on Twitter, hop on YouTube, hop on Discord, Telegram, get on the social media sites. You need a platform. You need to be involved with the community. You want to really build that up, really building that content up, and, building a viewership slowly and consistently. And then, lastly, write or talk about or, produce content that you're passionate about. If you're not gung-ho about crypto, but you want to kind of jump into the industry because, you see that it's growing, you're probably not going to make it. You really do need to be passionate about what kind of content you are producing.
Totally agree. And that will definitely show in your work, and people will absolutely recognize that as well. And just like you touched on there, it can be times where you come up to a bit of a brick wall. As a writer, obviously you've got writer's block for ideas, but a quote from George St. Pierre, who's a UFC fighter, and he talks about he's talking about the gym here, but I think this can be applied to anything in life, especially when you're starting a project, or you're starting your own business, or you're starting an article and you sort of hit a brick wall, and you feel like it's not going anywhere. So the quote is, the days when you feel like going, you get better on the days when you don't want to go, but you go anyway. If you can overcome the negative energy coming from your tired body or unmotivated mind, you will grow better and become better. It won't be the best workout you have. You won't accomplish as much as what you usually do when you actually feel good, but that doesn't matter. Growth is a long-term game, and the crappy days are more important. So, just keep chugging along, keep going through. If you're having a bit of a crappy day, you only come out with 1 or 2 paragraphs, at least you've come out with something. You haven't given up. You've got 2 paragraphs at the end of the day. Sleep on it, come back the next day, read what you've done, and go again.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had them. Have a rough day. You don't want to sit down and put the work in. People, are working on top of crypto, kind of putting their side projects together, and you're going to have those bad days. But what separates people who are going to be successful in this space versus people who are just going to burn out and fade away is that you really got to put in the time and the effort, even when you're not feeling like it. All right. Well, thanks, Alex, for sitting down and talking to us. For everyone listening, I know we talked about all the ways you can get in touch with Alex, but if you want a comprehensive list, his YouTube, his Twitter, his link to his Medium articles, and his website are all going to be in the description. So check those out. And again, feel free to reach out. Alex has been very open to this. If you want to get in contact with him, if you're trying to break into the writing scene of crypto, please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Don't be scared about reaching out to me. I'm more than willing to help anybody that sends me a DM. So thank you very much for having me. I've had a great time.
Right on. Same, Alex, man. You have a good one.
All right, guys, that wraps up another episode. And I just want to take a quick second to ask you a huge favor. If you found anything in the episode helpful, or it's been inspiring to you in any way, I just ask that you share it with your friends, family, anyone you know on social media, and hopefully we can help them out as well. Have a good one.